Energy. Man, always need more of it. I don't know about you, but I always feel like I need more energy. When it comes down to the energy powerhouses of our body, in our cell, it is the mitochondria. So there are many things that we're exposed to on a daily basis that can interfere with mitochondrial function. And that interferes with our production of energy and how we feel during the day, how well we think during the day, as well as how our hormones interact. And when it comes to optimal health, we want optimal hormones that our body can ideally produce naturally, and to support our body's natural supportive hormones as we age for the rest of our lives. And that's critical. So first thing, with the keto-green way in our Girlfriend Doctor community, I talk about, detoxification, how we have to support our body's elimination of toxins. And then also the important cellular nutrients and hormones to help support our adrenal glands and support our ovaries and support our body's natural production of hormones as much as possible. So I'm always looking for what's the latest, the best in science, the best product, the best strategy to help our bodies do this. And I recently came across a product called C60 that has tremendous science behind it. And I wanted to introduce this to you, my Girlfriend Doctor community, because we're always in need of more energy. And I know you're like me, like what's the safest, best thing that I can use or add and do that's going to give me the best, longest term and safest results. So I'm going to introduce you to Ken the scientist. Ken Swartz, he's the founder and chief science officer of C60 Purple Power. I know, I just love the name, and purple is a Girlfriend Doctor color. So totally love this. He is a health and wellness, which is C60 Purple Power. It's a health and wellness company committed to delivering the highest quality C60 products available. And you're like, what's C60? Well, we're going to go right into it and tell you all about it. So right now, welcome, Ken, to the Girlfriend Doctor Show.
Glad to be on.
Well, I know you've had a journey in C60, and as a scientist, you're going to tell us a little bit about what C60 is. So let's start there. Why should we even pay attention? What does, C60 do? Where does it come from? And why is it a cutting edge scientific supplement right now?
Well, C60 is one of the most powerful antioxidants ever discovered. And it's a molecule shaped like a little soccer ball. You can see behind me on the screen. And
so for those of you who are listening, you can watch this podcast of this Girlfriend Doctor show on my YouTube channel at the Girlfriend Doctor. So you can check that out there under my podcast.
Yeah, so just imagine a tiny little soccer ball shaped carbon molecule. It's kind of a spherical cage-like structure. And it was discovered in 1985 and by three people, Harry Kroto, Richard Smalley, and Robert Curl. It actually solved a solution, a mystery in astronomy. But they got a Nobel Prize in 1996 for chemistry because of its unique shape. And basically, it was really hard to make, and it wasn't until the early 2000s that they actually did testing. And in like one of the first testing for toxicity, it actually was found to double the lifespan of test animals. And then it's gone on from there, and all kinds of positive benefits. And it was discovered to be a very powerful antioxidant. But it's an antioxidant that doesn't interfere with any of the body's signaling molecules, many of which are oxidative radicals. So it has virtually no toxicity at any level.
Okay, so no toxicity at any level, and it works to help your body fight off free radicals. And so when you ingest it into the body or put it on the body, how is it working?
Well, first, obviously, as an antioxidant, it suppresses the two most damaging oxidative radicals in the body. One is superoxide. That's an oxygen with an extra electron. And oxidative radicals are essentially your body rusting. And so just like your car rusts, well, your body can rust. And what happens when you have oxidative radicals do damage? Well, they cross-link proteins. Proteins kind of have to move around to do their job. And if you cross-link them, they can't fold and bend the way they're supposed to. So that protein's damaged. It doesn't work anymore. Also, oxidative radicals can punch holes in your membranes, your cell membranes. So things leak out that shouldn't, or things leak in that shouldn't. And obviously, they can also damage RNA and DNA. So you really want to, which is the blueprint of your cell. So you really want to reduce the oxidative burden that you're under, but you have to be careful because if you, a lot of oxidate, like some of the vitamin E, if you take too much, it actually interferes with signaling molecules like the nitrogen oxides. That's a vasodilator, contracts your capillaries or relaxes them. That's very important. You want to mess with that. Hydrogen peroxide and several others based around sulfur, iron, and zinc. And C60 doesn't interfere with those. It only really interferes, it only reacts with the superoxide oxidative radical and the hydroxyl, which is basically a water molecule missing its proton, so it's got that free electron there. And that can cause, of course, the whole cascade of oxidative damage, and C60 neutralizes that. And the other cool thing about C60, it kind of has this cage-like structure, and unlike other molecules that give up an electron to the environment to become positively charged, and of course, oxidative radicals tend to be negatively charged and attract to it, C60 does that actually by taking positive hydrogen ions from the environment and stores it inside that little soccer ball shaped cage structure, and then uses those positive hydrogen ions to neutralize the oxidative radicals. Like superoxygen goes back to regular oxygen, so it could go back into the Krebs cycle, or the hydroxyl ions just turn back into water. And this allows C60 reset itself again and again and again. And that's one of the secrets why it's characterized as several hundred times more powerful than conventional antioxidants.
Several hundred times more powerful. It's crazy because you sent me some and I've been using it. So this C60 and actually putting it in my smoothies, putting it in my coffee. How do you recommend using it?
Well, usually you would take it in the morning, and there's and then because it does have a stimulatory effect when it gets the mitochondria going and on the other things going in your body. So if you take it late at night, it can keep you up. So we recommend it in the morning. If you've never taken an oil straight, then you could probably put it in food because, you know, if your pancreas and the duodenum will eventually adjust to that, you know, release more bile. But in the meantime, you know, that takes a couple months. So your body, you just take it with food. And the amount people take is anywhere from a teaspoon to a tablespoon. Now, you know, if you're midweight and, you know, maybe in your 30s or 40s, a teaspoon works. That would be fine. I'm a little older. I have a few gray hairs, and I weigh about 180. So I take about a tablespoon a day, because or more, because as you get older. And the main thing, C60 is what's called an SOD catalase mimic, and that's superoxide dismutase and catalase, and they really deal with superoxide, the most damaging oxidative radical of the body. C60 does the job of them in one step. And as we age, a lot of the endogenous antioxidants that our cells make, which really can't be supplemented for, like SOD, catalase, and glutathione, they go down. And so when you take C60, and also because the mitochondria, they're little energy powerhouses in your cell, they have their own DNA, and they're kind of like self-regulating organelles. So if they don't have enough antioxidants to run full bore, they just kind of tune themselves down. So they make ATP the energy molecule of your cell. So now you're not getting enough ATP to do the cellular metabolism. Well, you take C60, C60 is actively uptaken, passes the gut barrier, passes the blood-brain barriers, actively uptaken by the mitochondria through endocytosis, and then the mitochondria can turn themselves back on because now they have an SOD catalase mimic. They can take care of that superoxide burden. And then once that happens, well, you get a lot more ATP. And then the other benefit is mitochondria also makes some other stuff in most cells besides ATP, and that is pregnenolone, which is the precursor molecule for all the hormones, and a bunch of lower level synthesis, amino acid synthesis that is used in DNA and RNA production.
Wow, you've said a lot there. There's a lot of scientific terms. There's a lot of concepts here, from endocytosis to pregnenolone. Pregnenolone is one of my favorite hormones for sure. And it is actually in my balance cream, progesterone. It contains progesterone and pregnenolone because of the important, potent antioxidant effects, but also, you know, it's the mother hormone. It creates progesterone and then all our other reproductive hormones, including DHEA, estrogen, testosterone. It's a key building block. And our hormones are naturally declining as we age. So that's where we really want to support, again, you know, let's help our body make as much as it can. And let's detoxify and remove the things that are interfering with that, and make sure that we're metabolizing our hormones safely as well. And so C60 can play a role in that as well, right?
Yes, it can do that because once you take C60, it goes everywhere into all the cells. So let's say like in your pineal gland, because the pregnenolone production is up, ATP production is up, that means you're going to be able to produce more melatonin. So your sleep gets better. And in the pituitary hypothalamus complex, that makes the human growth hormone and like a dozen other master hormones. So those will be higher. And the same with thyroid, and especially the adrenals, you got the mineral corticoids, the glucocorticoids, and of course, what's really important, the androgens, which are turned into pregnenolone, pregnenolone, testosterone, or estrogen, depending on who you are, and at different levels. And so the thing is about C60, because it raises pregnenolone levels, the cells, the body itself selects what hormones it wants to produce. So it's not like hormone replacement therapy where you're just getting one hormone. This is just raises, because what C60 does, it lifts the oxidative burden the cells are under. Now the cells can operate the way they did, years earlier. And then you kind of go back to a better health, but it's your body that decides what hormones are going to be produced.
So let's go back to that. What is some of the oxidative burden that our mitochondria and our cells are facing today?
Well, to start off, obviously we've got 40,000 industrial chemicals or stuff, which have never really been tested on toxicity, and that's in our environment. And, before you leave the home in the morning, you've got 300 to 500 different chemicals you've been exposed to. And of course, there's ways you can help reduce that. It's in cosmetics, it's in household cleaners. I like the Think Dirty app. That's really, you can just scan the barcode and it'll tell you, is this product you want to buy off the shelf, dirty, in between, or clean, relatively clean for you. And so that's something that we can all do. And also in like our food, a lot of food is full of pesticides and herbicides and other things. So the more that you can eat organic food, they found that just eating 2 weeks of all organic fruits and vegetables reduced the pesticide and herbicide in the human body by 90%.
That's huge. That's huge because you consider that burden, that toxic burden on our body. So to reduce it 90% by going organic. And I really hope like my listeners, you're really owning into this. It's hard and can be more expensive to buy organic, but it's better for your body in the long run for sure. And for those you love, and just choosing the best you can do. You talked about Think Dirty app, and with the EWG, so environmentalworkinggroup.org site, you can look at what is your dirty dozen, the dirty dozen foods. You can also Google on my blog, you'll see a list of those, the dirty dozen and the clean 15 foods that are typically low in pesticides, but the dirty dozen very high in pesticides. And you want to really choose organic for those. And then of course, your free range, because we are what we ate, and what their food was exposed to too. And so that makes a difference. As consumers, we will drive change because our dollars matter. And I always say money is energy. Let's drive it into the healthiest way possible that circles back to us and our families and our communities. And I know it's a challenge. So I've been a single mom raising 4 kids, and it can get expensive. So, but in the long run, we're creating healthier families, and that's key. So many times when I've seen a client or consulted on a patient who's had a diagnosis of cancer, for instance, it's like, where did that cancer come from? I'll never forget, I had a client named Cindy, and she was in her late 40s, and she had been diagnosed with stage 2 breast cancer in her early 30s. And I asked her, well, where, she went through chemotherapy and radiation therapy. And I asked her, how did you get cancer? And she said, I don't know. I said, let's go back in your history. And so went back to how she, to always say, well, how was your health how was your mom's health while you were in the womb? What kind of stressors were in the environment? Where did you grow up? And she grew up on a farm in South Georgia that was heavily sprayed. And then she worked in a paper mill, which was high in formaldehyde exposure. And during that year that she worked in that mill, She had diarrhea continuously, irritable bowel syndrome, diarrhea for that entire time. She'd been on birth control pills and had an emotional conflict with an abortion that she had. So these were things that had been that's part of her stressors, right? These are psycho and physical stressors that she'd been. So I knew her gut was messed up. I knew we had to work on healing, letting go of guilt, blame, and shame. And I knew that we had to address hormonal detoxification. So plus with that, part of my functional workup with hormone testing was looking at Krebs cycle. So the mitochondrial function, going into and looking at organic acids and metabolites, and how well is she functioning at the cellular level. If we can optimize our cellular function, our cell-to-cell communication, wow, gosh, everything else gets better. And then looking at, what bioidentical hormone, if any, she was a candidate for, and what I could do for her from that point, plus checking her genetics to look at her epigenetics and looking at some key markers beyond BRCA, beyond BRCA, looking at MTHFR, looking at COMT. You guys, these are available and cheap for us now. They weren't 10, 15 years ago when I was starting in this area, but they are now. So it's really nice to get that information. And so with that information, it can say, wow, if we do these things, you're reducing your risk, hopefully eliminating, God willing, eliminating your risk for any recurrent cancers. And so with that, of course, we implement the keto. We know intermittent fasting decreases your risk for cancer. So increasing your quality protein and making sure that we're choosing the right foods for us and avoiding food sensitivity. So you guys, that's part of the big picture. And, when we're looking at what can we do, why are we dealing with what we're dealing with today? And what can we do to get rid of all that, clean all that up, and improve cell-to-cell communication. It's like having a good neighbor. I love to make that analogy. If you have a good neighbor, your house is looked after, even when you're not there or when your kids are home throwing a party, you will find out about that. So cells, and if you don't have a good neighbor, they won't even tell you, unless they're angry at you. They won't even tell you, like, hey, I saw someone in your yard, or what's the situation? So, or bring you your packages when they're delivered to the wrong house, right? So when you don't have a good neighbor, they don't turn off unhealthy cells, and that creates that metastasis. And that's where we really want to create healthy cell function and autophagy to help that at a grassroots level, essentially at a foundational level, to decrease toxicity, decrease inflammatory diseases such as cancer. And I think really looking at the science and been deep into the science on C60 since I learned about it. And I think it's just critical. So let's jump back and talk about like the Krebs cycle, mitochondrial function in the Krebs cycle. And you guys, I know we're going to get nerdy here with all this science, and then we're going to jump into more on pregnenolone again, because I think it's so powerful and it's so under valued. Like we don't hear about it because number one, there's no prescription synthetic produced at this point. But so we want to really understand the mitochondria, the Krebs cycle, and how there are cutting edge ways we can test now.
Yes, well, I think one of the things, well, first thing, C60 supports the Krebs cycle, being the antioxidant, and it actually gets in the mitochondria. It's actively uptaken. It goes to the outer side, outer membrane of the mitochondria, which is positively charged. It's got all these hydrogen ions there. So the C60 actually fills up with hydrogen ions, like up to 6, and then it becomes positively charged. So it heads toward the inner membrane of the mitochondria, which is negatively charged. And along the way, it neutralizes superoxide and occasional hydroxyl ion until it runs out of its hydrogen ions. Then some of those oxidative radicals will stick to the C60, giving it a negative charge. And it kind of moves back to the outer membrane, where it neutralizes those, refills with hydrogen. So you can have like hundreds of thousands of little C60 molecules bouncing back and forth between the membranes in your mitochondria, reducing the oxidative burden. And this is especially important when you exercise, because your production of antioxidants can go, of oxidative radicals can go up like 100 times if you're doing super physical activity. And that's eventually when those oxidative radicals kind of spew out of your mitochondria into the cells. And that's when you get the lactic acid buildup, because which is part of the, which kind of interrupts the Krebs cycle, and then you get tired, you can't do that. And we have a lot of professional athletes that use C60, and they found that their, you know, the buildup of lactic acid is much slower, so they can run further, they can lift more, they can do whatever their athletic endeavor as well. And it works with horses too, but I won't mention the country. They went from mid-pack to winners in their races with C60. But the other thing here, when you're talking about the Krebs cycle, C60 supports the Krebs cycle. But you got to remember, C60 is not a replacement, because the Krebs cycle needs all kinds of inputs. You know, healthy fats, carbohydrates, vitamin C, that's a critical part, NAC. There's all kinds of critical inputs that the Krebs cycle needs. And so having those, getting the proper nutrition is super key, because C60 is only one tool in the toolkit for better health, but you got to do all that other support to get you there.
Yeah, no, I hear that. And that is such a good clarification. So I think also too, like when we talk about being able to empower our hormones to make more. So how does the like how do we, by supporting mitochondrial function, increase the pregnenolone? Go through that for us.
Yeah, mitochondria actually make the pregnenolone. And they take that LDL cholesterol and they convert it into pregnenolone. And that's another, we've had a lot of people, anecdotally, by the way, that take C60 have their LDL levels go down, because because, you know, and that's probably why you have it that gets too high anyway, because, you know, they say cholesterol is bad, but cholesterol is needed as a precursor for all kinds of very important substances, especially fatty substances associated with the brain to do functioning. And so I think probably as we age, our mitochondria efficiency goes down. It's the LDLs not being synthesized in the pregnenolone, which goes into different hormones. And so it builds up. And of course, then it oxidizes, sticks to your arteries or veins and causes problems. So that's a key one. And then once the pregnenolone is made in the cells, and the cells decide, you know, obviously the cells of the hormonal system are going to be producing a lot more pregnenolone than other cells. And so, and then the body, and also because C60 is an antioxidant and it sort of protects everything in the cell. So that means that your protein synthesis, neurotransmitter synthesis, all those synthesis that happen can actually happen without them being damaged by oxidative radicals. So you're getting your ATP, you're getting, you know, all the various chemicals and other substances your cells needs to function built correctly. And when those are there and the pregnenolone, then the cells can decide what hormones they want to produce when they want to produce it. And this does bring one counterindication, by the way, for C60. One of the things is when you take C60, it will increase mineralocorticoid production in your adrenals. And if you're on blood thinners, mineralocorticoids regulate blood thinners. So if you're on a blood thinner, you want to get extra testing with your doctor, because C60 can help get rid of the underlying problem, which caused your blood, quote, to be thick. And if you're taking a blood thinner, then your blood can be too thin. So you probably need extra support. And this also maybe a little bit in the same way with the hormone replacement. Like this has happened a lot of times. We have a 70-year-old guy, right? He goes to his doctor. He's got testosterone levels of 350, which is kind of low. So the doctor gives him creams. Now he's up into the 700s, the mid 700s. And then he takes C60. Next time he goes into the doctor's office, his testosterone level is 1200. So the doctor backs him off of the creams. So we've had many, many of these cases. So if you're taking C60, you probably need to get a little more testing, especially if you're on blood thinners, but also in the hormone replacement, because your hormone levels will rise across the board and you may not need as much hormone replacement as you needed before.
And what are you seeing with thyroid function?
Well, thyroid function, we've seen a lot of people have gone off their medicines, thyroid medicines and Hashimoto's. It seems to reduce the inflammation. One of the things that C60 does is it causes apoptosis of senescent cells. And those are basically zombie cells. They're not working. The DNA is damaged for some reason.
Explain apoptosis.
Apoptosis is programmed cell death, and it's non-inflammatory. In the case of through the mitochondria, when C60 gets into like a senescent cell, and it's in the fermentation mode, right? It's not burning oxygen like it should be. So it's in fermentation. It's making nasty products that poison the cells around it, but it doesn't want to die. It's like a zombie cell. It doesn't want to die, even though it has damaged DNA. And so it goes in this fermentation mode, stops providing antioxidants like to the mitochondria, like SOD and catalase and glutathione to run. Well, C60 goes in there, it's an SOD catalase mimic that mitochondria start back up, they'll send messages to the nuclear DNA of the cell. And if they don't get the right message back, they cause apoptosis, which is programmed cell death. And that senescent cell will break down into apoptotic bodies, which are non-inflammatory, and the phagocytes will come in. Those are little, like the garbage truck cells, and they'll just clean it up and be done with it. And then now your tissue or organ has less cells than it needs, and it sends messages, say, hey, we need more cells. So stem cells, it'll increase stem cell production. Those stem cells will come in and make like a new thyroid cell, or a new heart cell, or a new intestine cell, or whatever that cell is needed. And that's, we've had a lot of people get off their thyroid medications for like Hashimoto's, and it's probably due to the replacement. It takes a while. This happens over like a year or two. It's not a very quick thing, but they're off it permanently. And it's, we think, because stem cells have replaced damaged cells in their thyroid, and then now their thyroid can work. But again, once here, C60 can support that process. But there's another really important thing, especially with thyroid, is fluoride in your water, or fluoride in products. Because when you talk about T3 and T4, that 3 and 4 you're talking about, those are iodine molecules, or iodine atoms. And so you need like 3 iodine atoms or 4 iodine atoms. The problem is fluoride's in the same chemical family as iodine. So if you're taking a lot of fluoride water or fluoride in other products like toothpaste, you can get a fluoride in where that T3 and T4, and then that hormone won't work. So it's really important, if you're looking for thyroid health, is to get the fluoride out of your diet.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I agree with you. And there's so many things that I'd not add iodine in natural ways. And so, yeah, iodine, selenium, tyrosine, really good for the thyroid function. So it's really fascinating. So how long has C60 been around?
Well, it's only been around probably in the commercial market for maybe 10 years, 12 years. It was really hard to make until like they got the Nobel Prize in 1996, but it was really hard to make. It wasn't until the early 2000s that it started to become, that they actually had enough to test. And they did the thing like they basically doubled the test life, or the lifespan of test animals, did it with mice again. And it created, like, they had no cognitive decline at all, increased their lifetime. And then they said things, I came through it. I was working on a fusion reactor, metal oxygen fusion reactor, and a lot of the people that had worked on that similar technology had died. And I didn't want to become a victim. So like that, or my crew, which I was responsible for because I was running the project. So I went out and I went for extra radiation protection because we didn't know what was really happening. We eventually did discover it. But, and so I discovered this stuff called carbon-60, and they gave like rats one set of carbon-60, and then the control rats, of course, got nothing. They hit them with a fatal dose of radiation. All the carbon-60 rats lived, and the control rats immediately died. So when I learned about that, I said, hey, that stuff's for me. So I got a couple sources for my crew and myself, and we're all still around, by the way. I kept taking it even after the experimentation was over, because like the afternoon blahs went away. I had more energy, more focus. I was just kind of feeling better. But the real thing is, I went 7 months after I'd been taking C60, I went into my eye doctor, and my drusen, or dry macular degeneration, had completely disappeared. And my eye doctor had never seen that before in his practice. And by the way, that continued because my friend, the electrical engineer on the project, Gary Rodriguez, had developed severe wet macular degeneration. He had we used to be able to post the before and after pictures, and he had just like horrible lesions in his eyeball. But after doing about 1 year of MCT oil, C60 and MCT oil, it completely healed up, which just never happens. And his type 2 diabetes, which is causing the problem, went away as well. So Rodriguez, right? It kind of runs in the family there. So that was, these are anecdotal things. They're not supported, quote, by scientific studies, but we've had a lot of anecdotal in that area.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating. So what should women expect when they start taking C60, and either a teaspoon to a tablespoon? Doesn't decrease the effect if you're putting in your coffee, right?
No, it doesn't. It's C60. Yeah, C60 is pretty much indestructible as a molecule. And C60 has no solubility in water, so it has to be dissolved in oil. And so your ability to digest oils is really important with that. So a lot of people take enzymes as you get older. And also the C60, if you're, like, say, in your mid-weight and you're in your 30s or 40s, maybe a teaspoon is fine. But as you get older, especially if you're in menopause, and probably, or you got some gray hair like I do, probably you're looking at it like a tablespoon. And work your way up. Start, maybe half a teaspoon, and then work to a teaspoon, and then you can work to a tablespoon, which I believe is 2 teaspoons. Just kind of slowly work it up, and because there is some, especially if you have a lot of inorganic heavy metals in your body, like the first days you can take it, you can get a little bit of metallic taste in your mouth. C60 neutralize turns like things like mercury hydroxide and aluminum hydroxide into oxides, which your body can grab and get rid of. So you're probably going to dump a lot of heavy metals once you start taking C60. And also it has a slight positive to charge, kind of like some heavy metals, like a lot of heavy metals do. So, and it's a little bit bigger, but it tends to dislodge inorganic heavy metals from your body. And then they go back into solution. It prevents them from redepositing. So now your body can grab them and get rid of it. So like people with a lot of mouth metal, you might feel a little bit of metallic taste for the first 3 or 4 days, and then that goes away. And then you're going to start seeing the benefits of C60. And what you'll probably first notice is increased energy, mental focus, like the brain fog list, little aches and pains go away. That's the next one. And then over time, like the increases, let's say in pregnenolone and hormone levels, also as your body rebuilds itself correctly because your proteins and neurotransmitters and other things aren't being damaged, that takes longer. That you'll see really improvements in like 2 or 3 months. That's when you really start seeing some real improvements in the functioning, like the afternoon blahs went away for me. So that's, you eat the lunch and then you have to go take a nap. Well, that kind of just smoothed out. So you see just a lot of smoothing out and a lot of aches and pains. But, if you've had a problem for a long time, C60 can lift the oxidative burden, but it's got to be your cells doing the healing, because that's really what's you. It's yourself that's doing the healing. So as once again I mentioned, you've got to make sure good nutrition, clean water, reduction of stress. That's huge, whether it's from physical environment or personal relationships, and just avoiding toxins of all kinds if you can.
Yeah, decrease the toxic burden all the way around. I think that's just something that's there's so much I preach. In my first book, I have a whole chapter dedicated to toxins and the hidden toxic exposures. And that's in my book, The Hormone Fix. So Ken, when we're looking at this also, it just makes sense that this would improve fertility and ovarian function.
Yes, well, we obviously, because there's no testing with C60 in pregnancy, really, in animal models, that just hasn't been done. So we do not recommend it for women who are pregnant or probably nursing, although it has no toxicity really at any level. But since we don't know, it's just
right. It's better.
But
what about fertility, getting pregnant?
Yeah, C60 definitely increases, because one of the things C60 does, it'll increase your hair growth and your skin gets better, but probably that's with the follicles functioning in your body, the same thing's happening. So yeah, you take C60 has many anecdotal things, increases the chance of pregnancy largely. Yeah, really, yeah, a lot of people that could not get pregnant take C60, the next thing they know, they're pregnant. So
okay, so for my menopausal women that are listening and are like, oh my God, I don't want that happen to me, don't worry.
Yeah,
I think you're good. But ovarian function is tied into longevity. So the healthier we can keep our ovaries, and our postmenopausal ovaries well into our 60s is still functioning, still producing some testosterone. I'm sure it's producing some progesterone. It's still producing some hormones, and it's part of the HPA axis, the communication between the hypothalamus, the pituitary, the adrenals, and the gonads. And so
seem to have a problem here, Anna.
Oh, do you not hear me? Did we freeze up? Oops. Hey, Ken. I think I lost Ken, so I'm just make a note here for my review team, my editing team. Let's see. So I'm excited to be using C60 myself and to continue to experiment with it. I definitely have felt clearer skin, some more hair growth. There's a combination of things. I'm working on a lot at one time, of course. And the key things that I want to add into my regimen are things that's going to help produce my body's natural hormone production as much as possible and decrease inflammation. And so that we have improved cellular repair, as well as, of course, the importance of having energy throughout our day. So we'll tell our audience, like, I know we're going to have a link below for your C60 because there are many imitators on the market, but yours comes very highly recommended and highest quality that I've seen. So I was excited to trust in it and to try it. And so I'm happy to offer it to my audience. You guys, I only offer things that I myself use and trust and understand the science in. And this is one of those products. So, and they have a C60 massage oil for sexual health and intimacy, which is really fun too. So do you want to talk about that a second, Ken? Why a massage oil and how does topical make a difference?
Okay. Yes. I've got a little difficulty there, but that's okay. Yeah, there's probably, yeah, when the C60 market was really small, everybody, you know, they're pretty much, they made good products for their customers because they used it, their families used it. But then C60 became popular. And so there was so there's kind of been a lot of fly-by-nighters coming in.
I hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yep. I think we're having some technical difficulties now. It looks like we had some technical difficulties. Well, I will tell you what I know about the C60 sexy formula, that in a very purified oil, it's the C60 molecule, and it's used as a massage oil. It can increase sensitivity and blood flow, and that's really important, especially on our delicate female parts. So I definitely encourage giving that a try too. You guys, we will have a link for you guys in the show notes. And definitely please sign up to my email list. If you have not, you definitely want to get my newsletters at dranna.com, so that you can get some more email and information that I'll be sending out with a coupon code. I just think it's important to look at what's cutting edge in our world and our science, what's safe, what's studied well, and to be able to implement that to empower ourselves. So on that note, I want to thank you so much for being part of the Girlfriend Doctor community. Wherever you're listening to this podcast, I am grateful. Please give us a 5-star rating, and that really helps. And tell your friends. This is guys, we're at over 1 million downloads for this podcast, and I'm really excited about that because this is the lives that we're touching, and I'm loving the connections and plus the conversations that have been generated from these shows. Keep telling me what you want to hear more about, and I look forward to seeing you next time on the Girlfriend Doctor Show. Thank you.